Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs Valdrack Jaentschke, thanks for joining me on UpFront. Nicaragua this year has been in crisis. Since April, you have hundreds of people reported killed, thousands wounded, armed groups attacking civilians on the streets, thousands of Nicaraguans fleeing to neighboring Costa Rica. Does your government, the government of Daniel Ortega, take any responsibility for any of that?
The government of Nicaragua faced a violent criminal coup. The reason we call it a coup is because its fundamental and main objective was to overthrow the constitutionally elected government of Nicaragua, an election that happened just recently in 2016, and that was recognized by many international organizations, including the OAS, as expressing the will of the people. That violent uprising, that violent coup, was perpetrated by a group of political motivated fringes of political parties, NGOs, who then mobilized through manipulation, terror, and fear the population of Nicaragua.
So a lot of governments, a lot of human rights activists, a lot of journalists have objected to your description of it as a coup. They say you haven't brought forward evidence. You say it is a coup. Isn't the easiest way to solve this to allow UN observers who you invited into the country earlier this year to finish their job rather than kicking them out, as your government did in August when they asked for greater access to prisons and to other areas of public life?
We did not kick out the UN Human Rights Commission. We invited the UN monitors to accompany the government and the dialogue, especially the Council of Bishops, in organizing what we call the Verification Commission that was supposed to go on the streets and try to verify what was happening. That is what we invited them to do. That reason was not any longer needed because...
Well, it is needed because you're telling the world there was a coup. You're saying that all the protesters are the ones doing the killing. The UN are saying, hold on, we've got evidence otherwise. And you say, goodbye, we're revoking the invitation to the UN.
198, now 200 deaths, that are the result of a coup.
That's not what the United Nations monitors say.
But it is result of the coup. I'm saying those
that's your opinion, is my point.
Well, it's somebody else's opinion.
Okay, and I'm
also
saying the United Nations, who are a pretty credible group of people, it's not the CIA coming to check on the ground.
Yes, but I'm saying
the UN are saying that we've seen human rights abuses, we want to go into prisons, we're not let into prisons, we're getting reports of killing of civilians.
We have just released the number of prisoners and the conditions what the prisoners are doing. What we are saying is that we did not invite United Nations for that specific activity.
I get that point.
No? So therefore,
I'm saying, but why not let them investigate if you're claiming a coup?
That's a decision.
That's normally what countries do. They go to the international community and say there's a coup against us.
But we are claiming
You've provided no evidence and you chucked out the UN.
No, we're claiming
Makes you look suspicious, doesn't it?
The evidence is very simple. The mobilization on the street was to overthrow violently the government. If that is not a reason, and if that is not the definition of a coup, then what is the definition of a coup?
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has said you're sliding into a dangerous spiral of violence and impunity. Amnesty says Nicaragua is turning into a pressure cooker about to explode because of serious human rights violations permitted by your government. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights says you should seriously investigate the killings. Human Rights Watch says the same. Are all these groups making it up? Are they all part of your coup attempt?
We invited the Inter-American Human Rights Commission to help us understand what happened at the beginning. Okay. And they, instead, because of their methodology, using information coming from NGO local organizations without any verification, began to define these activities. We say that what happened on the streets was perpetrated by a group of very radical and very violent military activists.
Do you have their names?
I can show you the photos.
So you've arrested them?
We have arrested them, and we are in the process of arresting them. And that is we don't have political prisoners. Okay. There isn't one single
human rights
person.
Groups disagree with you on the death?
There isn't
they disagree with you on political prisoners?
One single political
human rights groups
prisoner.
Say 400 people are being held since April.
We have captured, and that is what the human rights organization, even the Inter-American Human Rights Commission asked us to do. Okay. They told us,
here's what I'm confused.
We cannot look at these, we cannot look at non-state violence.
You are the Vice Foreign Minister of the country. Yes, you are traveling the world speaking on behalf of your government. I'm asking a very simple question. When the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights are all saying that you are killing civilians, that you are holding political prisoners, why are they saying that? Are they
because
is it a conspiracy?
They are feeding from a number of organizations.
So all of them have got it wrong. The most famous human rights groups in the world. And the Nicaraguan government is telling the truth. truth.
Do you
Wow.
understand the concept of homogenization of the discourse? This is what we're saying. The information that is coming out of Nicaragua is manipulated, and it is based on false premises.
Isn't the problem that when I look at it as an outsider, the human rights groups are admitting what you're saying? They're saying policemen have been killed by protesters.
Not only policemen.
Okay, but they're criticizing. My point is they're criticizing protesters.
More than 60% of those killed are government sympathizers or government workers.
Let me just ask you this. The human rights groups are criticizing both sides. You're saying you've killed no one. They sound more impartial than you do.
We're saying that the police has responded to armed attacks. That's what we're saying.
So when in
that
May,
is the basis.
So in May,
when
when pro-government militias killed 16 protesters in what was basically a massacre on Nicaragua's Mother's Day,
we don't have militias.
So who are the people in the masks?
These people on the masks are police and voluntary police. We have a law.
What are volunteer police?
The law of 1992, the police law of 1992, the police law of 1996, and the police law of 2002. Or 2006, recognizes that the police uses voluntary police, which is a group, is a set of citizens who support the police.
Let me ask you about the examples that are given by some of the reports. A woman told the United Nations that a group of hooded men detained my husband at our house, beat him, took him away naked. Is she lying? The pregnant woman who told Associated Press that she was hit in the face, slapped by a group of police and volunteer police. They crushed my fingers, hit me in the ribs and stomach. When I was on the ground, they kicked me. Is she lying too? Are all these protesters lying?
The Nicaraguan police has been recognized publicly and in the world as a human right, a police that respects human rights.
That's false.
That is not
That's
false.
flat false. I literally read to you quotes from Amnesty, Human Rights Watch, the Inter-American Association of Human Rights, the United Nations.
The Nicaraguan police has been recognized
in the
as
past,
a police.
not this year.
And you can't have a police.
That's just a false statement. Sorry to break that to you.
A basic concept is
you can't matter, Minister. You cannot just come and say a false statement. Human rights groups do not recognize the Nicaraguan police this year as respecting human rights. That is a flat,
Nicaraguan
false statement.
Does not violate human rights.
That's fine. That's your opinion.
Nicaraguan
you cannot claim that human rights groups respect the Nicaraguan police.
What I am saying is there's human rights organizations are feeding off of biased, politically
Everyone's biased except the
organization.
Nicaraguan government.
No.
So I'm asking a question. The women, hold on, let me ask my question again, because you're not the women who say, a pregnant woman, fellow Nicaraguan citizen who you represent, you're the government, elected government. Yes. When she says the volunteer police beat me, kicked me in the stomach, that doesn't worry you, doesn't bother you? Have you launched the investigation?
It worries me, and we are carrying out every single investigation that's necessary to understand what happened. That is the origin of the invitation of the Inter-American Human Rights Commission.
How many people have been prosecuted in your volunteer police or militias, as most people?
Well, we are carrying out the investigation. We are right now in the process of carrying to the courts every single one of those who are in the roadblocks. You must remember that...
I just want to be clear. I just want to be clear, because people might confuse what you're saying. The people you're prosecuting, you're saying you're prosecuting people on both sides of the demonstrations?
What I'm saying, we are beginning to prosecute people who have committed crimes, and that is a process that is ongoing. The police was off of the streets of Nicaragua for 51 days by request of the bishops. And the most heinous crimes were committed in those 51 days between the end of April and the middle of June. Since July 15th.
Okay, the police were off the streets, but the volunteer police were not. Daniel Ortega, who is now 70, has spent more time in power, 21 years over 2 stints, than the late brutal dictator he helped overthrow in 1979, Somoza. President Ortega hasn't just abolished term limits, he also seems to have brought back family rule to Nicaragua. The vice president is his wife, and his children have been appointed to key advisory positions in government. Is it any wonder then that his critics are saying he's the new Somoza, the new dynastic leader?
That is bringing back the whole idea of polarization, number one, and number two. I don't see any one of the children on the government payroll. I don't see that.
Hold on. Two of his daughters are advisors.
Yes, but they are not on the government payroll, and we're not going to get into that discussion because you...
Okay, we're going to go into who pays them, but they're government advisors. They have power. But they have power.
They have power. Now, let's go back to other examples. But come here. The vice president of the country, for many reasons, constitutional reasons, she has a right to run. For political reasons, she has been a cadre in the Sandinista movement historically. And we have a law, what we call the 50-50 law, that you have to have a candidate for president, the vice president has to be, if one is a man, the other one has to be a woman.
Great.
But what you're telling me is that because...
You're telling me gender balance is the reason she's the vice president. He couldn't find any other women in Nicaragua except for his wife.
Maybe they could, but what I'm saying is you have a cadre that has been historically a part of the Sandinista movement.
Okay.
Yes, there may be other people. Of course there are.
Let's talk about the Sandinista.
Other men too.
Let's talk about the Sandinista movement. The president's own brother, Humberto Ortega, who was in charge of the armed forces for many years, he says, quote, "This is not a dictatorship, but it's very authoritarian, family-dominated style of governing." Is he part of a coup, a conspiracy against his brother?
What I'm saying is he has his own position.
I know that. I've just read it out to you.
He has his own position, and he has a right to have his own position.
I didn't ask about the position.
I am not saying.
Is he part of the conspiracy?
I am saying I don't see he's part of any conspiracy.
So why is he saying you're authoritarian
Well, that's his opinion of the government of his own brother.
So when I look at so many high-profile figures who were supporters of yours in the 1980s, supported the Sandinista struggle, who are now shocked at what your government are doing. The philosopher Noam Chomsky says there's been a lot of corruption, a lot of repression, your government is autocratic. The celebrity activist Bianca Jagger says Daniel Ortega may be worse than Somoza, he's a war criminal. Jaconda Belli, the Nicaraguan poet, former Sandinista activist, joined your movement in 1970. She says Ortega and his wife have turned Nicaragua into a land of terror. Why are all these people who spent their lives supporting you, supporting your party, your government, why are they now saying this stuff? Are they part of the conspiracy?
They shifted. They shifted when we lost the elections in 1990.
Noam Chomsky shifted in 1990.
No, I'm saying they shifted when we lost the election. We're talking about the Sandinistas.
I quoted you Chomsky saying your government is autocratic. Chomsky is one of the longest standing supporters of the Sandinista movement in the entire Western world.
Chomsky, who is the best explainer of how this whole media manipulation system happens, can have his opinion. But you're talking to me about homogeneous opinions?
Okay. Let me ask you this. You have a situation now where, as you say, what you call a coup, others are calling, protests, legitimate protests. What is the solution to this crisis then? What are you going to do about these people who are taking to the streets? Just carry on shooting at them?
No, we're not carrying on shooting at them. Since July 15th, when we recaptured the streets, when we moved away, when we removed the barricades, there hasn't been one single person died.
One last question. As you deepen democracy, will you be supporting President Ortega if he runs again in 2021?
That's a decision of the Congress of the party.
But you're in favor of that?
Personally, if President Ortega runs, I would be supporting
You're
President Ortega.
President for life?
I am not saying president for life. Okay. I am saying the Sandinista is an evolving movement, a very strong nationalist movement who is there to strengthen democracy and to strengthen the development of the country. That is what was being destroyed in this perpetrated coup.
Vice Foreign Minister, thanks for joining me on UpFront.
Thank you very much.